So, as I said, my name's Mikey. We started getting so it was Tom, Alex, come back to you, eating person, and Evie, and
I'm Rod.
And what happened to Marius? Is he gone? We scared him away. Oh, we could have done it here. And what's your name?
Margot.
Okay, so we've got a kind of like a kind of home crowd around it. Come on, yes, we're just about to start. That's you. Come and join in. We'll give you a round of applause as well. This is Talkaoke Freeform Talk Show. We're actually in a freeform session. We can talk about anything you want to talk about. It's kind of up to you. We have got Margot, we've got Tom, we've got Alex, we've got Laura, we've got Evie, we've got
Rod.
And I'm Mikey. What's your name?
Anna.
Anna, welcome. This is Talkaoke. It's a freeform talk show. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about. It's up to you. And this man's going to join us as well. Maybe he's not. I was wrong about that. What do we want to talk about? We've had a lot of chat. It's been mostly ethics. I'm from the estuary myself, so I know a lot about ethics. Yeah, the only way is ethics, as we say. But we had a lot of chat about ethics. Do we want to talk about that? We've talked a bit about science. We talked a bit about data, AI. What do we want to talk about this time? It's kind of up to you. We can go wherever you want to go. It's really, it's your show. Let me just plug this back in. I might need some more gaffer tape as well. And yeah, Anna, have you got any thoughts?
I wanted to propose a topic. I don't know whether people will be interested in
Okay,
this
well,
or
let's
not.
give it a go. Let's find out.
So basically, there's DNA companies that are selling DNA testing
Yeah.
for like complex traits such as talent, personality, and cognition.
Yeah.
They do it sometimes for adults, and they do it sometimes for kids.
Yeah.
So to provide parenting advice on how to shape their kids and how to make their kids grow strong in their talents. And there's a lot of fraud behind these companies, which is actually reducing how much people trust this type of like DNA testing. So we are assessing what's going on in the market so that we can basically like put up there what's happening, and so we can protect DNA testing from being like not trusted.
Yeah.
So I wanted to hear your thought on that. What would you look at? What type of thing do you think would be interesting to investigate in these companies? Like just how would you assess how like reliable these companies are? Like I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
And where are these companies in the UK? Are they international?
They are sometimes in the UK, sometimes in Southeast Asia, they are spread around the world, and they test for like companies around the world, and they test everywhere.
Okay, so Abby?
Well, it just made me think, we've talked about a bit about it earlier, but similarly there are lots of private companies doing a lot of genomic sequencing, and then even if you say a health trust is using it, the fact that they then are paid to do it improves their model, improves their data. And so there was and someone was saying, oh, you should, I think this was the subtlety of it. It was like, why are we not charging them a small fee to post that? Like, why is there no kind of charging system that way? Because ultimately that private company that's doing the sequencing is potentially making a lot of money off it. But you also needed to do.
Well, I think Anna's question was about trust and reliability, because there were some spurious claims.
Yeah, there's some fraud behind that.
Yeah.
So there's companies that are only using the top SNPs in order to, for example, predict a complex trait such as empathy, which involves so many things.
It's a bit like a kind of sort of genetic astrology in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, in a way. Yeah. So, but also there's some companies that are more transparent about it than others. Yeah. So how would you assess, how would you know what type of items to look at when you are, what type of items to look at in the company?
Sorry. We're at the cutting edge here. Okay, we've got Tom, but hang on a second, we've got a new face over here.
Rashmi. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got Anna, we've got Margot, we've got Tom, we've got Alex, we've got Laura, we have got Evie, Rod, and I'm Mikey. At the moment, Anna's throwing this one in. there's some sort of dubious companies out there that are doing these kind of genomic tests for very complex traits like empathy or other talents. I don't know what other talent.
Musical intelligence, all type of like sport and neurons, like all types of complex traits.
But what I'm getting from you as well, Anna, this is kind of bringing down the reputation of genomic testing. That's your main concern about it, but also maybe about regulation. How can you actually, how can you make this? Does there need to be regulations about the claims you can make about this, or I guess there's all those kind of things involved. So you had something to say?
So I'd start off with how do they inform the people, or because we know that the genes alone don't determine the outcome. So someone might be more predisposed to be better at playing the piano, but if they don't practice, they're not going to be better at it. So how do these companies sort of deliver that sort of information to the people that are using these tests? Are they saying, "Oh, we're going to give you this result," but actually, 80% of it is how the child is nurtured versus 20% of their DNA and things like that. I'll probably start with that, because the companies that are taking it seriously will be the ones that are sort of putting these, for want of a better word, disclaimers in place when they're delivering the test.
I mean, how they're communicating it. Was there a question as well from you, Alex?
I just wonder whether when you have to also deal with the general problem of charlatans. So, if someone wants to spend £90 on a cranial osteopath, that's the sort of thing. I'm worried there might be
that's a bit of a snake oil profession.
Yes, I think I am.
Okay.
But then also maybe they feel better after they've spent £90 on a cranial osteopath. So if they pay the genetic charlatan some money, but it actually helps them create a plan for their kids' development, is that bad?
Okay, so there's an alternative health industry out there.
So I'd like to ask everybody here a question. How many of you have taken a personality quiz?
Okay, let's have a show of hands. Who's taking a personality? You taking one?
Yes. Very good.
Yeah.
So let's look at the people who are approaching or choosing to do these tests. And then there's one part, that's the people who are coming. And then in between there's also and in between are the people who are giving these tests. But there's no in between person who can decide if these people are serious enough. So I think there should be like an unbiased or like a middle organization.
Almost like a kind of genetic policeman.
Like genetic policeman that will tell you if they're treating this as a pop quiz or anything like that, then it could be just like for entertainment purposes only. Like it's like a personality test, so don't take it so seriously. But if they were to, of course, like he mentioned, you could charge some minimal amount for it, just for the fun, for the it, and it would be satisfying for people to take this in a weird entertainment sort of way. But would also be nice. But what is really important, and the point that I'd like to highlight, is that there has to be some standard that makes it clear, like a category. Like for movies, you have
So it could be a kind of
category,
rating.
like a rating.
It could be a rating. The rating could be, anyway, it could be a rating between
genetic tests, serious genetic tests.
What rating would you put this personality test? Would you give it like a high rating, or does it have like a low rating of 12?
For fun only, or for if you're concerned, or for fun only. It's two different categories.
Okay, so in this brave new world of genetic testing, maybe we're just, maybe there could be an entertainment element to it. Maybe it doesn't all have to be serious. Today we've been talking about serious stuff. Maybe there could be a more fun side, which is about, maybe it's more fun to say, oh, I'm an empath. I'm I don't know.
One thing I'd like to add is there are lots of non-profit organizations that could use the money from these tests. So if there could be an arrangement between them and people who want such tests, it'd be nice. Win-win for everyone.
Okay, could be a win-win. What do you think about this, Anna?
I agree with you that there has to be some sort of regulation. We've looked at that actually.
Yeah.
And the WHO doesn't have any type of global regulation. And then there's not a lot of guidelines for these companies. So we believe like companies that are for adults are more transparent for this. Whereas companies that are for kids, like they only provide data such as what is DNA, and then there's not a lot of regulation about this actually.
Yeah.
Like different countries have different things, but like there's none. And also we looked at whether companies were marking their company as recreational or medical advice.
Yeah.
So when it's recreational, it is fine. You're doing something fine. And if they are like, okay, this is not trustworthy like 100%, that's fine. You decided what to like spend your money. The problem is a lot of these times they are marking the companies as medical advice.
Yeah.
And
So
they are being like,
yeah,
exactly. And also it's not like they are spending 90 quid, it's like they are spending 700 quid. So it's like, yeah.
Okay, yep. So it's, yeah.
I just get this idea, like, from all the people, because quite a lot of people said that they have, is that a trumpet sound good?
I think it's good.
Yeah, it's good. I think quite a lot of people said they have done some kind of personality test, and I do wonder, every time we do a personality test, do people want to find something that's quite unique about them, or like they're quite a rare personality trait? Because my feeling is that that's what we're looking for when we do these personality tests or genetic tests, or I heard one from this exotic country or whatever that give them some kind of an edge. And I wonder whether that would be a bit too much to everybody who does some kind of either personality or genetics test or whatever, just to dig out some kind of tiny nugget that a person can like walk away with and go, but I'm special in this one tiny way.
Everyone wants to be a little bit special, don't they?
Yeah, but not everyone is. People are not special.
Okay.
Yeah, it just wasn't showing on the TV.
Well, that's a bigger question, I think. Are you special? No. So that's one for you there. Are you special? Come on. We're having a conversation here about these kind of like these companies that test for like very complex traits like empathy with a genomic test or musical ability. And we're trying to work out if maybe it's a way to bring in a more popular interest in genomics, or is it just basically unethical? And Margaret was saying everyone wants to feel special, that they're good at something or that they're unique in some way. But are they Margaret says no, they're not. We're none of us special. So anyway, what's your name? Gemma. We have got Rashmi, we've got Evie, we've got Rod, we've got Laura, we've got Alex, we've got Tom. We've got Margot and Anna and Monkey, and who wanted to say something?
So maybe they want to find out if they're special, or they might also just want to find out which box they fit in. Like in Harry Potter, you have these different houses. So just like that, which kind of gender trait I put in. So, like I said before, it's just about what the person wants.
Yeah.
So if you find out if the people doing these tests can inform the person and be transparent that this is the extent of the results or how seriously we can take them, I think there shouldn't be a problem with such tests existing.
So
in fact, we can use it to the benefit of the industry.
Yeah, I mean, you were saying earlier on, just to sort of fill other people in, that actually it could also be a way to raise awareness, but also cash for more, more exciting for you, but not exciting for the bunter research. Yes.
I think it just gives the impression that genetics is a lot more deterministic than it actually is. I mean, you can buy a genetic test to decide which wine you like. You can also just try some wine and see if you like it or not. You can buy a genetic test to see if your child will be good at soccer. I don't think it's very helpful for parents to be testing their children to find out which sport they should excel in. So I think that it needs.
Doesn't it popularise? Because one of the issues people will be talking about, we're having this conversation in here, out there, no one knows anything about it. Is it going to popularise genomics a little bit? We need to do this to get it out there?
Yeah, I think so, but I think it does lead to a feeling that it's more deterministic than it should be. And so then it comes into when you're regulating product sales. Is there any actual data to back that up? And I think in a lot of cases that probably isn't the case, but then there's not a lot of data to back up that your face cream works, right?
Okay.
But it's that kind of realm.
Okay, so we're in the realm of face cream. That we know, Evie and then Laura.
Oh, I just think that like the like maybe the more like gnarly intersecting bit of this, and like there's been like a lot of chat today or previously about like personalised medicine, and I would take a genetic screening if I think, oh, maybe I've got an illness and I really want to personalise. I want my best chance of getting better, so I want to get screened so I can personalise my care. And I think that would, well, I think that would be good for a business if they could do that, but then also I don't know whether again is that the case of like actually is it as easy as that as well, because it seems to be like something that people bandy around as well, but I don't know how successful that is.
I mean, are we too deterministic, full stop? Are we do we have a too deterministic outlook? Are you off? I want a final thought from you before you go. That's how it works, by the way. Anyone needs, please give me a final. It doesn't have to be the most intelligent thing. It could be anything, whatever you're thinking. Final thought.
Final thought, yes to all kinds of genetic tests, but heavy regulation and full transparency.
Okay. That's okay, right. Laura?
So I wanted to share my opinion and then maybe give you a tip that I learned yesterday. But my opinion about the whole thing is, well, why people do those tests or want to find out certain things. I don't think it's because we want to find out that we are unique and we want to feel special. I think it's because we want to find even like a niche group of other people who are similar to us, so we can kind of have this sense of belonging. Find our because everyone thinks that they want to be special, but really they want to have sense of belonging, whatever that means. And a tip, if you think that you actually want to be unique and special, is take a deck of cards and mix the cards by yourself, and the chance that this combination happens, it's very, very low, so you've probably just done something.
You've shuffled the cards
in a
way that no one's ever done before.
Since the beginning of
and it's probably the same with your genes as well. Okay. I'm going around because we've got Alex. Tom's had his hand up for ages, so we'll all come around.
So the thing that worries me about these genetic tests is that they might start selecting each other on the basis of something completely arbitrary. So apparently there was a period where people were buying cars based on the number of cup holders they had. And I think it would be really awful if these tests enabled us to just speak to people who are good at balancing because they might be good at, they're genetically predisposed to surfing well, or something completely like bonkers that could come out of this as a cultural phenomenon.
Okay, so that's another good example. You might be good at balancing, which might be good at surfing. Do you want to just hang out with other people that are good at balancing? I know it's a bit of a, you're looking at this is a crazy discussion, but I think we're moving somewhere here. I'm going to come to you in a second, Margaret. You've had your hand up for a while, Tom.
So I don't want to go all boring again, but I agree with trying to popularise the field, but we also risk undermining genetics and genomics by doing these sorts of tests, because the fallout from it is some people will take it as a pinch of salt, just like the personality test we all did on Facebook, and other people are really going to take it to heart, and you might end up with parents abusing their children and different things because they've got this idea
you must become a surfer.
Their child is their potential when they've absolutely disregarded the amount of effort and work that needs to go into it. They were talked earlier, there's all these researchers here that are trying to cross the bridge between of like trust between themselves and participants and patients who donate material and their genome to research. This sort of stuff is not going to help, particularly if it's not regulated and anything else. And also to follow on from what your point there, I've noticed that there's a thing called a Myers-Briggs type indicator, where people get given roughly like a profile of whether they're how they react to different things, and it crops up in dating profiles. So where people open up a dating profile and it says, I'm ENFJ or something like that, as if it's supposed to be like, I'm this, so you're going to like me if you're IJS or something like that, and it's nonsense, because it varies depending on the situation.
Alright, but is it like an icebreaker? This is what we're saying. Should we be popularising genomics, is what we're talking about now? Mark,
Okay, so basically, like, I embrace, I don't think child testing issue, but because it's the one I'm investigating. But before coming into the company that we are actually investigating, we run into several things, and you would find companies that are doing DNA testing for insurance. So according to your genetics, you will get cheaper or or more expensive insurance. You would get genetic testing for matchmaking. So you would have to send your genes, and you would have to send your partner's genes, and they would tell you that the chances that you are getting divorced. There are so many things that they are testing just to make money with, and they are selling them for 400 quid, and all this field US just started 15 years ago, and all this field is developing a lot and very quickly, but I'm very afraid of the extent of this type of test, because for example the test that I'm raising now, if with child, it could have impacts on children education and educational system. It could have impact on stigma and how everyone is more common and have more correlation between the genes that they actually think. On how it can have on mental health. It can have so many impacts on but if people are not able to trust this test because these companies are coming and are not and they are being fraudulent, how can we as a genomic community support the trustworthiness of this or
I mean, is there anything at all that the genomics community can do about these fringe players? Let's say, any idea, Tim?
I mean, I think it is our responsibility. I think the genomics community has to be the responsible players in this and actually bring some transparency and some. It's not about. You've got to be aware of the consequences of things. And you see in the US, people with being really, the far right groups using whether or not you're lactose intolerant, not to tell whether or not how white you are. This is ways of segmenting society rather than bringing people together. And I think that's really the concern.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we've got a new face to the table. Tell us your name. Is that your final thought? Okay. Good one. Thank you very much. We'll give you a round of applause. Basically, we're talking about genomic charlatans, really, and all these fringe kind of companies that are putting out tests for all kinds of things. Well, doing genomic tests, but then putting out returning results that are kind of fraudulent and not really backed up by the science, like an ability to surf, for example, or more, this whole thing about lactose intolerance, does that say just how white and European you are? So there is a sinister side to it. Is it something that the genomics community really needs to pay attention to? Does it reflect on the whole of genomics, or is it inevitable you're going to get these kind of fringe players? That's Marvin.
I wonder why do people do all these different tests for, and maybe it's rightly so that other companies are capitalizing on it. But why do people want these tests? Is it just so that they can just,
have you never been curious?
I have been curious, but why are we this curious? Why do we test for all these things, whether our partner is going to be compatible or not? I think it's our kind of human search for happiness, and I wonder whether science can just help with people being more happy. Can we just sort that out? Okay,
can we just focus on the science of happiness? And we can get your name. What's your name?
I'm Jan. Hello.
Hello, Jan. We've got Anna, we've got Margot, we've got Tom, we've got Alex, we've got Laura, Evie, and Mikey. As I said, it's kind of moved on a little bit. Is it because of a dearth of research into happiness itself that these genomic tests are happening? Do we need to be more responsible? Any views on any of this chat so far?
So I agree that concentrating on happiness is good, but I also think that people are curious, clearly, about both about their ancestry, which is essentially what you were talking about before, and also about what their personal genetics tells them about features of their own phenotype, if you like. And there are charlatans. Even the really responsible companies, the big famous companies like Ancestry and 23andMe and stuff like that, although they're not charlatans, they nevertheless have a sort of business model, which means that they're forced to tell a particular story. And so that can bias you in some way.
Yeah, I just want to get a final thought from Anna, just because when everyone goes, we always want to get a final thought. Are you going to come and replace?
I don't know. I'm sure.
Yes.
Why not?
Yes, thank you. You'll be fine. But let's get a final thought from Anna, and then we'll find out who you are, and we'll carry on this discussion.
So I think this test can actually, people can take them because they are curious, but also to what extent do they help with happiness? If they if you can find out you have a risk for developing schizophrenia and you have nothing to do about it. So how is that going to help you with happiness? So it's only about happiness. And also when you don't know you can trust something and you are being they are being fraudulent with this, when you realize that you pay 700 quid for a test that does not even tell you what you want to know, that brings you happiness.
Yeah.
So that's basically my final thought.
Okay, so not a good path to happiness. This is Talkaoke Free From Talk Show. It's up to you, and that's you, all of you, and maybe this person, if they want to join in. Maybe not. And you. It's up to you to decide where to take this conversation. So there's a few things on the table. There's this kind of science of happiness, and can genomics actually have anything to influence that science of happiness? There is fraudulent, there's the snake oil salesman, and the alternative health scene. Could they get into genomics? Will that popularise it, or will that actually diminish the reputation of genomics? And there's also this question about what you can say and why are people spending £700 to find out if they've got musical ability, etc. So these are all some of the questions. Tell us your name.
My name is Elena Peterson.
What is it?
Elena Peterson.
Can I call you Elena? Is that
You
okay?
can call me Elena.
Elena, we've got Jan, we've got Evie, we've got Laura, we've got Rod, we've got Alex, we've got Tom, we've got Margot and Mikey. Have you got anything to chip in at this point?
Memory for names.
That's what I do, day in, day out.
Yeah.
Some sort of genetic.
Yeah.
Some sort of genetic. I don't think so.
I may have a genetic predisposition to remembering people's names, but I may not. I don't know. I've never done the test. Anyway, I'm going to come back to you a second.
But I don't know if it is always about happiness, because if I would be interested to take one of these tests and have this information. But for me, it's like...
What would you like to know?
Oh, so I would love to have this information for my kids so that I can help guide their education, because I think a lot of time in school is just a waste. Like, you're not developing your talents, you're just doing a thing. And like, if you could get reliable information and help you plan, that would be a really good thing. And that isn't about just happiness per se, that's about making sure he has a good life, successful.
Okay, so
you're putting a lot of faith in the ability of knowing what your genome is to direct stuff in your life, and I suspect that there's a huge environmental impact, and you do sometimes fall into the trap of thinking that there's some sort of genetic determinism, which obviously is never the case, right? And if that lady there who was talking about schizophrenia was saying, well, what happens if you get some result that claims that you have a high probability of developing schizophrenia? Well, then I guess what you do is you say, well, maybe I have a high chance, but there are things I can do environmentally, which means I'm never going to develop it. So, anyway, sorry, you had that.
So, like, I have first-hand experience. I'm severely dyslexic, and a psychologist once told me I would never learn to touch type. So I never learned to touch type until I was about 35, and then I was like, no, I think I managed this. And then in about 2 days I was touch typing, and it's like,
wow.
And so I realised how it can go. I realised how it can go wrong.
Yeah.
But like I say, equally, you can tell how tall a rower is, and you do know that shorter people are going to find it hard to get in the Olympic rowing squad. So maybe if somebody's pushing a child towards something like what is a titch, like there must be some useful information to be derived. No, they're about average.
Okay, right. I'm just wondering if there's a personal element to this. And would you? That's another question about whether you would.
But then you just go off the phenotype, right? You look at them and you go, well, they're tall. So I don't really need to look at their genes because I can see that they're tall, right? So usually clearly there are some cases where it is very useful, like if you've got BRCA gene or something, then that's quite, you've got the variant that gives you high familial breast cancer, then quite clearly you might go for more screening. And so there are things like that. But most of the time you're better off just looking and talking to the person and going, oh, they're really good at maths, maybe they'll be a good mathematician, rather than looking at some genetic test which tells you maybe you'll be a good mathematician, and actually it's the random components of the environment just overrides most of the genetics.
Well, I mean, we've had quite a few mathematicians here. I wonder if we could today's been popular with AI people and mathematicians, so it is a chance to get them all together, and we could do a little bit of genomic testing to find out if there's anything particular about. Wouldn't that be more interesting than just judging the phenotype? I don't know. It's not up to me. It's up to you. Elena, have you got any views on any of these questions?
It's a little bit different space for me. So I work in 3D genomics, so it's kind of an up and coming space. So looking at 3D genomics. So we're looking at the nucleus, like how it's all
how it all folds together.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So a lot of it is dedicated toward disease or rare disease or cancer, of course, is kind of the low-hanging fruit for that area. Yeah. But there hasn't been too much in terms of like behavioral and stuff that I've been involved
with. There's no sort of popular side to this yet.
Not yet. You never know though. It's up and coming, so it could be.
I mean, can you actually visualize people's genes or snippets of their genes? Doesn't it all look the same anyway?
Well, no, right? Like I like to think about it as like inside the nucleus. It's almost like a bowl of spaghetti when you have it, and so everything's are interacting with each other. And so what
alphabetic spaghetti.
Exactly. Well, no, more like linguine, I think, or angel hair. But exactly. And so I feel like genomics has really opened up since the 90s a lot more questions than answers, and now we're finding new tools to help us answer some of those questions.
I mean, do you feel there's a legitimacy question or there's a popularity question? Because these are two of the things that have been brought up that if you popularise genomic testing, then you're actually bringing in a sort of public that's not really aware of what's happening in a place like this. And also, but the other side of that is potentially you're undermining serious science and serious research. So, I mean, are either of those issues something that you're concerned with?
So I can see both sides of it. For us and for the work that I'm mostly involved in, it's more like we're opening up clinical trials that other patients wouldn't have originally been accepted into. So it is giving them another chance that they may not have had without this test. So I think that's really important. But I can see, as it comes to the masses, you can now, 23andMe, and they have all these tests that you can do at home, that it does open a lot of questions and kind of popularize it in a way that could actually take away from it.
We've got a new face at the table, so we've got Lena, we've got Jan, we've got Evie, we've got Rod, we've got Alex. Are you off, Alex? Okay, we can get a final thought from you in a second. We've got Tom, we've got Margot, and what's your name? Mariam. And I'm Mikey. We're just going to get a final thought from Alex, and then I'm going to explain what's going on here and see what direction. It's up to you. You're here at Talkaoke, and it's up to you, not just you, but everyone around the table, to decide where to take this conversation. We're just a public speaking service. Alex, give us a final thought. You've been here a long time.
My only final thought is to thank this gentleman and to say I will be looking at the phenotype much more closely.
Okay. Anyway.
Good luck with the child rearing. I don't know if anyone's got any last minute tips for.
It's not a tip, but it's just an observation. My sister's got a daughter, and the daughter used to be really into dancing, which I was personally massively championing. But then she wasn't. Then she just dropped it, and her parents didn't encourage her to carry on with it. And I wish that she did some kind of a test which said your child will be exceptional at dancing, so she doesn't drop that subject.
So she's actually got some ammunition, some backup to say, look at this piece of paper, it says I'm good at dancing.
Because then she would put the hours in, the parents wouldn't discourage her, and actually dancing I think is completely brilliant, so
Okay, so
it might be the opposite, right? You might find out that actually she's predisposed to be a really bad dancer and it'll put her off. But maybe the PRS for dancing will be wrong, and it'll put her off when it doesn't need to be. So it's a dangerous thing to play with. To force it.
There's a really obvious argument about whether parents should know this information and actually try and force their kids down a certain path anyway. Like just because she might be good at dancing, like she doesn't have to. And in fact, if you push someone, the more deeper they get, the more competitive it gets. It's arguably the less fun and enjoyable it is as an activity anyway. Maybe she stopped because she just wanted to try something else.
Okay. Oh, big questions, Marion.
Dancing's rubbish.
Well, the reason I actually stopped by, I heard you talking about 23andMe and the direct-to-consumer genetic testing, so I got really
Well, that's how we started this all off, actually,
Yeah, so this is not something that you've been talking about, so I'm sorry if I'm jumping from one topic to another. But I was just curious, if you think about 23andMe or Ancestry DNA, there are actually around 250 direct-to-consumer genetic testing companies, but we only know about the huge ones, the databases of which receive like millions of samples. So the other companies, and these big companies, they sell data for research, which on one hand, we can discuss that, but on one hand it's really good, on the other hand maybe ethically inappropriate. So the other companies' data is silent for research. And I was just wondering what everyone's thought on this. Should genetic testing companies be open, obviously if appropriate technologies and security measures are in place for research or not? Would the data collected by those companies be actually useful for research? Does it have enough chips, enough coverage, yada yada yada?
Okay, I mean, so we've got these slightly dubious companies testing for all kinds of things, but it's a big funnel potentially for data.
I have a question for everyone around here, which is that a colleague of mine has just had his genome sequenced, and he's used a company which sequences your genome and then essentially locks it in a digital box and only gives you the access to it, and then you have the key. You sell your key to, if you want to, either keep it or you sell it to the companies who are doing drug exploration, that sort of thing. Have other people here heard about that, and have they considered doing that rather than going through Ancestry or these ones that actually end up owning the data?
Okay, so that in a way that is a subject we've been talking about a lot before lunch, this question about control and ownership of whether that is ownership is up to you to decide, but we've not heard this particular solution of having a key.
Yeah, exactly. So is it something that that is in the general consciousness of people working in the genetic field, that you can get the thing sequenced but no one has access to it apart from you, and then you sell the access on a sort of one-by-one basis?
Is that how it could work? You're nodding a lot there.
I mean, I am aware of these companies because essentially I researched this market. There is a company, Gordiome, and I presume it might be the one. Gordiome.
Gordiome.
So, so there is a type of companies that either delete data straight away or they block it. But it really depends on the awareness. If people are not aware of what are the drawbacks of leaving data unsecured, which could be anything because genetic data it's not a password that we can change. But I think the problem is with most people that they are not aware, and therefore there is always demand.
In an expert situation like this,
are
we aware?
I wasn't aware.
Yeah, but I'm just soliciting for everyone else. Does everyone else know about these?
Who knows about Gordiome?
I did my sequencing with the Dante Labs. I don't know if you guys know about that.
No.
So I sequence all my family. My two kids and me and my wife were all sequenced, and they follow a system. No, it's not the same. So you can get the raw data, and I have the raw data, and I'm a bioinformatician, so I wanted the raw data to analyze it myself. But they can offer you panels. So if you know that you might have a certain condition, they'll offer you a panel on dermatological genes and things like that. But the data is free, so the data is not free. They'll give you the data, and I don't think they'll store it forever. So I got the data. Even if I wasn't going to analyze, I would get the data because they want what you paid is not to keep the data forever.
They don't do the analysis. They don't.
They do panels.
Oh, right, but they don't sell the data to other people to do analysis.
No, they do their own panels. Sorry.
Okay, all right. So let's. I mean,
the general population, like for a group of people who are involved in this field, I feel like it's very different for people who don't know what these tools actually mean for them. Like, what does that data mean? And especially if it's not being analyzed by someone that knows how to do it, and being able to interpret those results.
Okay, so I mean, the there is a huge chasm of knowledge, but I mean, does anyone know what this data means really, or the possibilities that but we've got a new face over here. What's your name?
I was just going to say, as an academic, Professor Angelica Ronald, I haven't heard of the service you mentioned. It seems quite open to criminal activity, right? I mean, I could just look at your name, pick up your coffee cup, obviously you need a decent sample, but the ownership of the image quite vague when obviously we're dropping it all the time on our skin cells and you're grabbing your coffee cup saliva cells and stuff.
Okay, so there's DNA kind of everywhere anyway, so can you really lock it and own it? The question of ownership came up earlier on today, but also the question of how, what that interaction is between a personal ownership and a public data bank. And, this question of locking it didn't come up, of encrypting it, I guess, in a sort of kind of blockchain kind of way or something like that. I don't know. Some tech person help me out here. But,
just out of interest, did your colleague know how? So they talk about selling the data to another company. Like, how much is your data worth to sell? And would you know how much how much value it has for a company?
So he didn't want to sell it, he wanted to analyse it, because we have our own analysis tools, like research level analysis tools, and so he wanted to do it but without surrendering it to anyone else. And so, I can see that. They give you a USB stick or the digital equivalent and you have it, and then you can do things like this. I take your point about you could do that with anyone's DNA, but you could do that regardless of the technology. So I don't know, it's an interesting thing.
I mean, do you think this is something that could be and one of the things we were talking about earlier on is the kind of standards, how to manage this thing, and the fact that there isn't really, could it become a standard?
Well, I think the one problem with it is it's going to be a little bit more expensive because they're not taking a cut on the side by selling the data to other people.
Yes.
And people are willing to save 50p just in order to, and they don't really care if the drug companies have their data, and so it's a bit of a hard sell for some people.
Yeah.
But I think it is a reasonable way forward.
Is your genomic data worth 50p? That's the question. Marion?
Yeah, I just want to confirm those numbers. It is actually open information because those companies like GSK and 23andMe, they said that they're going to pay this much for this many people, so you can count, and it actually ends up being very, very modest amounts. So
yeah. Well, also just very quickly, there have been lots of talks here on these big sequencing projects, especially in the UK, where everyone is actually going to have their genome sequenced essentially as an NHS level. So that's going to the research. That's going for research anyway. So you maybe don't need to do that. Just need a way of accessing that.
But could you still have a key for your NHS data?
I guess that would be sensible, and I think probably people are working on how you do that, but it is essentially your data, right? So I guess someone's working on how you get access to your genome sequence if it's done under one of these big projects.
Okay, final thought from you, Elena? It doesn't have to be profound,
I know. Oh man, I wasn't prepared for this moment. No, I'm happy to be part of this conversation. It's a lot to think about, and I'm excited to see where the field keeps trending. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Very exciting, definitely. We've got some new faces at the table, so I'm just going to get some names. Oh, are you off as well? Is it Angelica? Give us the final thought before you go. Come on.
Yeah, I'm just not sure about if it's our own data or not. That's what I'm curious about, because we're correlated with our parents and relatives, and we're putting our DNA all over the place.
Especially people like Evie, who's an identical twin that has to share her genome with her sister. Okay, so does it actually, is it our own data after a big one? That is a,
I just have to go, and I want to speak my final thoughts.
Yes.
I think we as a community need to learn how to monetize our own data and not let the companies who sell that without giving the money. So that could be something for that.
I mean, do you think having a personal encryption key for your genomic data could be a way of doing that?
Absolutely, because I can track, for example, I can give access to a particular company if the research interests me and get money for that, and then if I don't like particular research, I'm not going to give my own data to that. So I think this is just a kind of a decentralization that we are all moving towards.
Okay, so it's part of a general trend of decentralization. Thank you so much. Marco?
I just want to shout out because it's 3 o'clock now, just gone 3 o'clock. We've got Ranjit at the table, but I'll let him introduce himself. And we are into our final session of the day, which is on population genomics. Who should be screened and for which diseases?
Well, we're kind of going on to that anyway,
so,
but we'll come from a more popular angle. Started off talking about all these kind of fringe companies, let's say, that offer to tell you about, you know, how good you are at canoeing or something like that, or, you know, your ability to smell different types of wines. I just made those two up, by the way. Come and join in. Yes, that's you. I shouted a bit too loud there. We're running out of batteries as well. So we're moving on to this. Let's get some names. Tell us your name.
Ranjit Machanda.
And are you, I take it you are an expert in something you can come down as one of the experts. Tell us what you're an expert in.
I work on population gene testing or using genetic testing for either improving cancer care and treatments or for screening, risk estimation, population stratification, cancer prevention, or disease prevention.
Yeah. And how's that going?
Good.
Okay, well that's definitely
I've got an interesting story just on the back of what you were talking about before, which was that if you have your own data and you sell it to other people, then you also have the potential to manipulate that data and send them wrong data. Right, which is sort of interesting, and that actually has happened in the past, not with human data, but I know that GenBank was polluted with deliberately misleading data for species of for sturgeon species, because criminals who were selling caviar wanted to make sure that they weren't able to identify the species from which the caviar was coming, and so they were submitting deliberately fraudulent genetic sequences into the databases in order to undermine the ability. And you could do this with, if you had your own data and you were selling it to other people, then you could do this, right? You could say, I've got this terrible condition and here's my genome sequence, and you could deliberately undermine research if you chose to.
Yeah, and especially that data was particularly, then became particularly valuable, you could actually.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you'll be able to spot it, but it's sort of an interesting thing that it does. This stuff is open to fraudulent manipulation, and I don't know if anyone's going to talk about that.
Okay, so there's that.
We're just gonna swamp in our healthcare system. We're gonna fall. I don't know how to collapse.
Yeah.
So if you open the Financial Times and BBC, every day there's an article about the NHS on the brink of collapse, either because of nurses striking or mental health issues and so on. But the bottom line is that we're, as a society, we're spending 3%, less than 3% on prevention, and that's not sustainable with an aging population. You know, we get older, more chronic disease, but our healthcare system is not spending close to enough money.
Okay.
I think it's worth having a look at, predictive genomics. It's just not going to be. We're not going to have
it's our only option.
It's our only it's not our only option, but every option matters. Every option matters because the situation is so dire. We're not going to be able to sustain.
So we're on the, come and join in, we're on the brink of a huge, I guess, a huge healthcare crisis. We need to get, it's Francesco, isn't it? Yeah, Francesco says we need to get predictive genomics up and running. Ranjit?
I agree that most of healthcare spend is focused on chronic disease, and I agree with Francesco, we are getting older. The two commonest conditions accounting for chronic disease are cardiovascular disease and cancer, which probably account for 70%, if I remember statistically correctly, of healthcare spend, and unless we get a better handle on it and prevent more chronic disease, definitely there's a high chance that we can't sustain the level of spend going forward in our Western health systems. I think genomics has potential, but we need to be very careful on the applicability being robust, validated, and there being clear clinical utility. We need to distinguish between what lies in the research sphere and what actually has valid clinical applicability today. So there is more, most of it still lies in the research sphere, and there's a lot of hype. but actual application in specific diseases is really fairly limited. And it's restricted at the moment in just a few disease conditions in my view. But the potential and therefore the ongoing research spans lots of different types of conditions. And we need to be very careful on how we apply it. There's no point just going ahead and testing just for the sake of testing. There's nothing you can do about the information. So we just need to be conscious. There are a huge range of issues on, you were discussing on data confidentiality, misuse, issues around ethical, legal, social implication, ownership, but also need to distinguish clearly what's within the public sphere, what lies within the research ambient, what you're doing with the biobanking stuff, what actually has clear clinical utility, and then you design implementation science or discovery science around both these issues.
Okay, so I'm going to just summarize that as a lot of hype. Let's get some more names. What's your name? Josial.
Yes.
And what's your name? Ali. And any views on this? I mean, is it mostly hype, as Ranjit says? Is that hype useful in any way?
So I think if you are to sustain the momentum, because I think that's what, hopefully I'm touching the right subject here. You need to bring the people with you. By bringing the people, genomics needs to address the real large challenges of people. And I don't mean just one part of the population, I mean the entire population. Look at the diversity of data, the diversity of participation, the involvement. Look around you. So you cannot have these efforts. I mean, there are diseases such as sickle cell that affect a particular segment of the population that receive less than 5% of similar diseases affecting less number of people. So how do you actually convince someone who has a relative who has sickle cell to participate in the genomic program when there's no real program they can see targeting sickle cell?
So basically what you're saying, it's not just sickle cell, it's any sort of...
People need to see themselves in the research we're doing. If it doesn't reflect my pressure points, my needs, my family, there is very little incentive in me participating.
Okay, so we actually need to widen the research away from, let's say, more, what more...
So if I go to the hospital, my pain needs to be recognized as part of the initiative strategy where investment is coming or investment is being put.
Okay, so are we just focusing on a few diseases and maybe that are like white European diseases? Are we actually spreading this out to the whole world? Is that going to improve the clinical efficacy? How do we get to that level where there is a good clinical outcome? I'm just going to come to you in a second, Andrew. I'm going to go to Francesco.
I suspect we have the same answer, or I hope. Because I think what's missing is exactly, so these technologies are not ready. The science is solid, there are plenty of studies that demonstrate that stuff again like progenic CRISPR work. As Raju, right? He said before, it's not tested in the field. We don't know how good they are at predicting. We don't know what's the economic value of this. So to me, first thing to do, large pan-European randomized control trial, providing again predictive genomics to a large set of the population, monitor them for 3-4 years, and see for real, in a real clinical setting, who benefits from it, for how long they keep their, if they change their behavior, if they don't change their behavior, how much this test costs in real life, not just the price of the progenically scored, but the microarray, the delivery, the genetic counselor, all the stuff. And for that we need one large pan-European randomized clinical trial that sets once and for all, attached, that would be my dream, with a full HTA, health technology assessment. So someone like NICE or all the other payers in Europe have the hard evidence they need to say, okay, I'm going to pay for it or not. So there is a risk that that's not going to work, all right? My feeling is that it's going to be successful. But
okay, so you want to...
I also have a commercial.
You got okay. So it's not just about dreaming big; it's also about a bit of cash as well. We're going to hit the cash sound effect. Josiel, I'll kind of come to you then, and I'm going to come to you, Ranjit.
I think again, whilst I agree from a commercial, I'm in biotech, I'm a commercial service provider.
Yeah.
You cannot have the fastest growing population in the fastest growing middle class.
Yeah.
With the largest diaspora, talking about pan-European, the UK and many other countries in Europe have the largest African diaspora in their populations. These are your ambassadors back home to what you're trying to do here. Excluding them from this initiative, you've lost nearly 1 billion people who could carry on.
Rather than pan-European, it should be pan-global.
It doesn't matter what pan is. Pan needs to be including these people who are your ambassadors to their respective countries and can talk on behalf of you. It's like any networking session. You want people to talk about you when you're not in the room. You don't have to when it comes to genetics.
Yeah. Okay, that's definitely Ranjit, thank you, Josiel. Okay, that's a mic drop. Yes.
Thanks. I agree we need implementation science studies. But before you even get to implementation science studies, you need to validate whatever algorithm or whatever disease state you are trying to use and how you're going to stratify the population. So you need to first demonstrate in whatever design setting that you can stratify, the risk is accurate, or whatever risk disease you're predicting is accurate, and actually it does what it says on the tin. Once you have that, you take it into implementation science studies and you will look at the model of delivery, the model of implementation, the behavioral impact, the psychological impact, the uptake of screening, prevention strategies, and the health economics of it. So that is happening, for example, for breast cancer, possibly to some extent as an opportunity for cardiovascular disease just now, and I would argue it can happen for ovarian cancer. I'm not, I'm a cancer person, so I'm not very well versed with lots of other conditions, but for lots of the other chronic disease states, there is potential, but I don't see there being, I've not really seen the validated risk models which, and you need, when you're stratifying someone for this, you need to define what is the threshold at which you will do an intervention, what is the effective intervention that is actually going to decrease the risk. I think these things are not really well defined in a robust manner to do big population studies for some of the disease states as yet. Randomized trials for some conditions or some designs, it depends on the question you're trying to answer. It may not always be the right answer for the question you want to answer. So RCTs are important depending on what is it you're trying to address. But if you just want to go ahead and do an implementation and look at health behavior as an outcome, you can potentially even do it in a cohort setting.
So you don't think we're ready for this huge?
There are studies which are ongoing. There are, for example, in risk-adapted breast screening, there are studies which have been running over the last few years. There are RCTs in risk-adapted breast screening which are running today across Europe and in the US, the MyPEM study or the Wisdom study. We have just started a large population trial for doing testing for high-risk cancer genes plus SNPs and PRS and breast and ovary risk, which is the UK-wide study, which will start hopefully by end of this year or next year. But it's a study we're running, and we have all the endpoints you mentioned in that study, from health behavior to psychology to prevention, screening, health economics. We're trying to address the questions in that, but you need to do it for specific disease states, and the conditions or disease states for which it become applicable is going to expand in the future. So I'm not. What I mean is that I didn't say that it's all high, but one has to proceed in a stepwise manner. The things for which they are already applicable, the things for which applicability will improve in the future, but it's not applicable across the board today. You can't do something with information across for everything today. It's restricted. For what you can do today is fairly restricted to certain conditions.
Okay, so restricted to certain conditions.
But it needs to change and will change.
It will change, yeah. I mean, in the end, you sort of believe in that kind of overall. Come and join in. Oh, this is Talkaoke. At the moment we are talking about, I mean, Francesco's got this idea that we just need to pull the lever and just do like almost a population-wide genomic testing, and actually Ranjit's saying we're not quite ready for that yet because we need to.
That's not what I said.
Oh, you
No, that's not what I said. I don't think we're saying different things actually.
Yeah.
We're saying similar things.
But we're saying we need to have all these things in place that. Go and say it again because I can't remember all the things. The psychology.
I think I said you need to do an implementation study to evaluate all these outcomes. You need to define what is it, what disease or condition you're addressing. You need to define, can you identify risk? Can you identify a risk at a level above which you can do something?
Yeah.
What is the something you're going to do and does it lead to a benefit?
Yeah.
Then you need to do the study to say, can I do this? Will people take it up? Will they sustain it? Will there be a benefit? And then you need to look at all the various outcomes and the economics of it. And it's not that you can do, we're not at a situation where you can do it for all things together at the moment.
Yeah.
We're at a situation where you can do that sort of thing for certain things, and those certain things are, for some of them are happening or about to start, and we are about to start one of them. But for the other things, they're more in the discovery and validation phase at the moment. So it needs to be done in a stepwise manner, and so this idea that it can be done today for everything is not really true, but it can be done for some things, and hopefully that those things it can be done for is going to increase in the future.
Okay. Okay. So hopefully that makes some sense. We have got Laura, we've got Ranjit, we've got Evie, we have got Duarte, we have got Francesco, Tom, Margot, Ali, yes, and what's your name?
Amara.
And
Leanne.
Ali, you've not said anything yet.
I just want to have a little comment about this. So what I think is that what we are missing always the follow-up. So the follow-up does not exist. So shall we work together or we work in singularity? For example, you write a grant with a 10 million and you run with this grant for 1-2 years, you get something, and then stop. And then second group in a second country, the UK or in Germany, Germany, then they start from scratch and they rebuild everything. First, of course, I understand that the publication rules and this is the ego, novelty.
Yeah.
And that is everyone wanted to have a novel, for example, let's speak about mutations. So I'm looking for a mutation that diagnoses cancer. Of course, you don't want it to work.
So you think we could actually work together a bit more?
You know, there's in academia, this is the ego, limiting ourselves a lot, and the publishers themselves. For example, Nature will not publish your article because you validate, I don't know, someone work in Sweden. They say, oh, okay, it is not novel. Although it's more important because the follow-up study is more important than the others because I confuse. Go to the GBAS catalog, you will find hundreds of thousands of mutations for part 1 cancer. Which one I will use the signature? No one, because there are hundreds of thousands. Everyone, if you just make a follow-up in PubMed, like a query, PubMed database, and see, put a cancer and see every month how many new variants, new mutation for this cancer. So what I trust nothing at the end. All of these hundreds million go nothing, but if you put like 100, 200 millions together in European manner, I'm saying European because where's the money is there. This is why we speak about European.
So you think we could actually join together some of this research a bit more and actually...
To make it concrete, a problem in my opinion, the follow-up. So there's no follow-up, and there is singularity.
Okay. I'm gonna go to Duarte because you've had your hand up for ages, and I'll come to you.
No, not that long. I have a little bit of a different way of looking at things, and your description is, I think, it's very accurate. When you want to, let's say you have a certain disease in mind, you need enough samples, enough people with that disease to kind of take the signal out of the noise. Is that not? Anyway, let me. I'll explain what I'm thinking. So I think it's really connected to how we did the human genome, right? When you did the human genome, when you got the data, it was nothing without the annotation. The annotation was what gave it meaning. And I think what we have as a big problem with the genomic sequence is what we were talking before, which is the reluctance of people to share their own data. Because if you think that, I believe that genome sequencing is going to be pennies, right? It's going to, in the future, it's going to be really, really, really cheap. So what makes it a big source of data in the future in terms of novel discoveries is if everything is there, if all the people are there, and there's a good communication between all medical systems where you annotate, you phenotype everyone that has the data in there. The data will start giving you discoveries that you haven't thought about. I'm going to do a study about this gene or about the disease. Is if everything is there and it's properly annotated and the phenotypes that people get of diseases over time gets annotated, these things pop out of the data in a way. I think it's that's the way. But I don't think that will happen anytime soon because of the reluctance of people have. If you sequence all your kids when they're born, and the data is there, and your NHS doctor puts in a database every single thing that will happen to you over the course of the age, that data will bring out all these disease phenotypes out. They'll pop out of the big data that is there. That's how I see it.
Okay, so it's all there waiting to be discovered. Do we need to think more globally? I'm going to come over to what's your name again?
Oh, Leanne.
Yeah.
I have entered this chat a bit late, so
that's okay. That's how it works. This person's entering even later. Come and join in. Yes. Yes. We'll give you a round of applause. Yeah.
But I was just going to say that I think I agree with Ali. If we're discussing I guess population level newborn sequencing, I guess is that it's promising, but I feel like there's more growth potential in terms of upping like bioinformatics capabilities, data analysis, because right now I feel like the data that we might be collecting is growing at a rate that is unprecedented, but we're not growing the analysis and implementation capabilities at nearly the same rate, on top of the fact that I feel like there's a lot of potential for data sharing partnerships, both within a country and then worldwide, as opposed to maybe pushing newborn screening or population scale screening. I feel like both of those are probably areas that we can improve on quicker with better outcome than necessarily newborn screening.
Okay, so in a way it's just about using that data and doing more with the data and actually
as opposed to collecting more data. I think that there will be a greater improvement, more for less, basically.
Okay, so in a way it's just more about using the data we've already got and actually doing more with it.
Just following up, I think it's very important point that you got the data and how to standardize that. So for example, people usually submit processed data, and you don't want processed data because you have data from 10, 20 sources. I mean, mathematics, you need to standardize your pipeline, and you cannot. And I want to give an example of what you said, for example, about sharing data. So we were working on a project, we want lots of data for our master student. So he has only 1 year to finish. 6 months only awaiting European Genome Archive people to answer, because everyone need to fill 10 forms, lots of stuff. And TCGA, with this control access data, it take forever, months, and if they say sharing data, but it is not real, nothing shared, they don't answer you, they don't respond.
Okay,
so lots of money spent on this data, but for whatever reason, control access always. So this is why I really hate this idea of control access. So you finish your project, put your raw data somewhere, let someone use it.
Okay, so that data should be freely available, it should be standardized as well. I'm going to come to you, Francesco.
I love so many of the arguments we made. I feel I agree with a lot of stuff. So one thing, again, you work in Germany, right? So that's great because there are research infrastructures, pan-European research infrastructures that actually should help you to facilitate access to this data. I'm thinking of Elixir, that are actually based here in the UK, and their job is actually that of facilitating access to this sort of data. So happy to bring this later. But my comment was more on to the economics of this whole testing, newborn screening, polygenic risk scores, and so on. my feeling so when I was a patient advocate, I had several companies, I'm not going to mention, coming to us and explaining genomics. So like most of that I know about genomics I learned from these companies approaching patients to let them understand this is coming. You can question that if it's ethical or not. It's on my place here. But my point is, these tests are coming to the market, whether we like it or not. There are plenty of companies here that sell polygenic risk scores. More are coming, and some of them I think have a high level of. I agree with you that do not get there at the level of validation of the data that's so good. There's still more work to be done. But my worry as a citizen is that this stuff is coming, and we don't have a systematic approach. I'm really looking forward to projects like OFH and possibly similar projects in other European countries that can target focus on this issue at national level. Because I wouldn't want, this is my very personal opinion, I wouldn't want a free market of these tests. I would rather have a national strategy that puts me in front of a genetic counselor to give me the access to a polygenic risk score, rather than me going out and buying that test or this other test and then filling it back. And I don't think this is going to happen unless countries across Europe and beyond set up large national projects.
Yeah. So actually we need governments, we need national institutions to be handling this.
Yes, the alternative is the free market. And then I'm not sure that as a community we want that.
Okay, then we come back to you.
So you point out important issues around governance and clinical applicability and utility and how it should be applied. I think the interest of industry in a free market don't always go hand in hand with the interest of the population or the government. It's something we need to recognize. It's not just in this industry, it's in every industry. Because they're responsible to their shareholders and their job is to make money. So they'll try and say anything they can, but I think we need to get the governance right, and I would be hugely worried if people are just doing PRS testing without understanding and there being robust validation and the clear applicability and utility around it for the sake of making money. And if you do it in the research context, it's very different. With informed consent, but saying I'm going to go and sell it in the free market for anybody to do it, it's not research. But what are you selling? What are they going to tell them? Who's going to interpret it? What's the risk? What are you going to do about the risk? Is there something you can? Is that thing you do effective? What's the data and the validation and the research behind it? Have you published papers? What's the economics of it? So you need to answer all these questions before you do that.
Okay. I mean, we started off this whole discussion a long time ago talking about these dubious companies that offer tests for personality traits or, your ability to, to be good at music or something like that. And, the question at that moment was, is this actually providing a funnel for data and actually popularizing genomics in a way that no government or institution would ever do? But is there, in the ecosystem, is there room, maybe not for the most kind of dubious companies, but for, that kind of approach?
To what end? To what end? I mean, to what end?
Okay, well maybe you can answer that,
Well, I don't know how.
What were you going to say? You were going to say something.
No, I was just going to say that I think that.
Come and get involved in this discussion. I'm now too far into it to explain what it's about, but just sit down and it'll become apparent eventually. Yes, exactly. Yes.
But I was going to say that I think that. I mean, not for the most dubious companies, but I think that getting the public engaged and accepting of genomic data analysis and what it can do for their health outcomes is really important, especially when it comes to these population scale initiatives that are so powerful ultimately. People are not going to want to participate in something that they don't trust. So I think that that's where these companies that are direct to consumer, 23andMe, there's a bunch here today, they fulfill that role to varying degrees of success. But I do think that there is a place. There's many improvements to be made, but there definitely is a place.
Okay, so maybe the end is popularisation or understanding on a wider scale. Let's just get this person. What's your name?
Simon.
Simon. We have got Ranjit. We have got Evie. We've got Duart. We've got Francesca. We've got Laura. We've got Margot. We've got Ali. And what's your name? Sorry. Leanne. And I'm Mikey. You don't have to say anything at this point, but if you have got something to say, please do. You don't know what we're talking about. We're talking about roughly someone else. You can sum up, Francesca.
So, your question, what's the end? So when the NHS was created after the World War, for every parent you had 4 or 5 children that were going to sustain the healthcare expenses of the 2 parents getting old. In the 70s, when the Italian healthcare system, my own healthcare system was created, the number of children per parent was already decreased to 2 to 3. My kids, okay, I made 2, so I'm pulling my weight, all right? But in general, we're going to have 1 kid sustaining the healthcare, the deteriorating health of 2 parents and 4 grandparents. So to me, and this is not sustainable. So as a patient, I'm not patient advocate anymore, but if I look at the healthcare system, whatever can help to decrease the cost of this is worth exploring. Then if it works or it doesn't, exploring exactly what you mean, we need to check, does it work? How economic it is? What's the exact pathway? I completely agree with what you say. What I am disappointed is that there is no funding. The funding for this is sparse. It's left to the individual researchers' will and understanding. And apart from the UK, there are very few countries that have decided, okay, this is a problem number 1 for the next future. We need to invest into this. Let's have a look at predictive genomics. Let's have a look at other stuff, behavioral psychology, whatever works to or can have a chance to impact this problem. Because to me, that's problem number 1.
Okay, so the growing healthcare burden, can genomics help? Are we ready for these population-wide studies, or are we not ready for it? So there's all these questions. I'll come to you in a second, I'm going to come to Ali.
Yeah, I think for this also we are missing 2 kind of trust with the people. So in my opinion, we are in academia, we are not doing very well. Why? Because in the bioinformatics or in the research or everything, as a citizen, for example, in Germany, I'm paying 45 of my 45 or 35 of my salary as a tax, and a big portion of this tax goes to this research. Yeah. And then, for example, COVID came, and cancer is there, and I don't care. I'm not in the field, for example. I'm just normal, ordinary citizen. I say what these people are doing. Yeah. For 20 years, drug repositioning and drug repurposing, and every year lots of pharma company appear and spin out of this DRG grants, and they claim we are the best drug discovery engine. And then, okay, as a citizen, I'm so happy. And then COVID came. Yeah. Nothing. 3 years, no treatment. Cancer, no treatment. So how I trust give you my money for doing nothing? Yeah. We take the money. It's not good management. So. Yeah. Sorry, in my opinion, we are not doing very well.
So, do you think population-wide genomics would actually make us more ready for something like
No, because if I don't trust you in this, how can I trust you to give you my sample? Okay, I don't trust you from the first step. I don't trust you to give you my money. How can I trust you to give you my genomic data?
So you think in a way that's things have gone bad, things have gone sour with the public because of things like COVID. The trust is diminished. That's an interesting point.
I'm in complete agreement with what you say. I wouldn't be sitting here and I wouldn't be working in genetics, but doing the work I do. The point I was picking up was what Mikey said. My interpretation was that why don't we do testing for the sake of doing testing and sell samples for the sake of selling samples? And my comment was to what end? Everything needs to have a purpose, and that clearly reflects what Ali is saying. You have finite amount of money, finite amount of resource. Health systems have restricted funding, governments have restricted funding, you're in the recession, there's a war going on, a whole host of problems the society is dealing with. You need to be very careful on what you're using the money for and to what end. And there needs to be a clearly defined purpose which is going to answer a question which is then going to lead to benefit. And what I see is a lot of noise and very less of music being played.
What about the questions of the future, like that we don't know if they're going to come, such as a future pandemic?
So all those things are important, but I mean, how are you going to link genomics to a pandemic? I don't know, but we're talking about other fundamental questions. Yeah, but no, links still from the point of view, I guess, from the point of view of disease and from the point of view of money and resource and economy and all those things. But we need to be careful on what we are spending it on, and it needs to be purposeful. That's what I was trying to say.
I'm just going to, you've been here long enough to potentially have developed an opinion about this. So I'm going to come to you first. I know we've got Evie and Gerard that want to say something. And we've got a new face over here. Let's just get your name.
I don't know what's going on.
Just tell us.
I'm Australian.
What's it?
Timothy.
Timothy. That's all we need at the moment. It will become 5 years. You will know. It will gradually become more clear. I hope. Simon.
I think I'm going to come back on what Ali said. I think I've got, certainly from what's unique, I've got more trust in the government doing things that I've seen over the last 3 years. So maybe I have a bit more hope for the future. I mean, I give all my data to Google, I Google stuff. So I'll give my genomic data to whoever as well. Kind of mission gets smashed up and helps.
Okay, so you actually think that there might be among certain sectors more trust, more belief in.
There might be, but it obviously isn't everyone.
I meant the trust in the outcome. Yeah, what I meant is the trust in the outcome. Do we trust the outcome? Do we trust that I give you all of this money, genomic data, blah blah blah, 10 years waiting and you do nothing? For example, one of my relatives, my aunt is having breast cancer, and then she's dead, and she knows nothing, and now 10 years later, and nothing happening. What you are doing, guys? I mean, I know, I'm people outside, I say, that's what you're doing, I know cancer is complicated. Okay, leave it and spend the money on infrastructure, good streets.
Yeah, okay, so it's hard to really talk about an outcome. I'm going to go over to...
Actually, I was going to say the same thing as Simon. I was going to say, on the pandemic side, actually I thought it was amazing. Like, we got mRNA vaccines, you got fast testing, fast tracking of new variants. I think that was brilliant. That part was brilliant in terms of what we got. I think the main problem that kind of scares me much more is, for example, as I said, I did my sequencing of my genome outside the NHS. I decided to do it myself outside. The company that did a really bad job. It would be really bad for me to give that to the NHS as a data, because they did. I won't say the company, but they did a very bad job of how they gave me the data. But so I'm happy that there's like standardized tests done within a system like the NHS that validate what is good and then what they store in their databases. What I think is, as you were saying, the government, the people don't trust the government, that they'll be very wasteful, and especially with genomic sequence, there's this aura around it that people will copy my genome or something like that. So that is very difficult. So in terms of getting people to readily sequence their kids at birth, which I think is what you need for like population genomics, where you sequence everyone at birth and you just keep a very good annotation of every phenotype of the people as they progress in life. I think that is the future of analysis. But it's very difficult to get that because, for example, one thing I always thought was really terrible was the BRCA genome patents. That put us back, I don't know how many years, because how do I know that the funding that the NIH in the US gets or the NHS gets here doesn't get funded? They fund companies and research, and then that data gets given to them, sold, and then patented. So that kind of thing is very, very complex, and I would hate to have my data. I wouldn't mind giving my data to be analyzed and researched. But if I knew that then that gets privatized and profit from it, then I would be pissed. I would be very furious.
Okay. So I'm gonna. There's a few people with hands up. First of all, I want to say they're doing the speed networking over there, so we need to give them their tables back. That's for maybe Rod. You can do that. Our cameraman's going to do that for us. But there was a point over here from Evie. Duarte is pissed about people patenting some of the.
I don't mind patents. See, what I don't like is that funding that was given by taxpayers to do research and find these things. If Google spends billions and finds something interesting and they want to patent, profit for me, that's marketplace. What I don't like is when the NHS spends millions and this data gets privatized, puts into databases, and then somebody else buys it and privatizes it. That's what I don't like.
I think there's a general agreement about that. Ali, I'm going to come to you in a second, but
well, no, it's just interesting talking about, we talked a bit about earlier about when, to what end, and then you were talking about, you know, it needs to have an impact, it needs to, you need to like know what the impact is, can you do something about this data, can you do this research? But we were talking to, I was talking to a researcher here earlier from King's, and he was saying it was quite frustrating because all of the funding that they get for their research, they have to fill like basically a box of like, yes, this is going to likely have some kind of clinical outcome, yes, it's like, this will be achievable, He's like, we have to tick so many boxes, and he's like, we actually kind of become a bit unambitious in our research because it has to have so many clear deliverables that they don't actually end up doing any like blue sky thinking that could have an impact.
Okay, so does this kind of outcome-based demand reduce blue sky thinking? That's a good question. I'll come to you in a second, but I have to go to Ali first, and Timothy, if you've got anything to add at any point, any interjections. Hopefully you're starting to pick up the pieces of what we're talking about. Mate, I don't know. Ali?
Just a good point. I could agree with very important point what he's saying about you take from my tax and you fund this project and then you give it to a company, the data, and later this treatment I cannot use in the health insurance, and they say it is not covered by health insurance, although it's already taken from my money, even without health insurance. And I need to, there are some diseases, I hope you have not passed through some diseases, but there are some stuff are really expensive. And then if it has outcome, it is patent and it is very expensive. If it doesn't have outcomes, it is research, you paid for it. Thank you. So it is not fair. So I fully agree with the point that is about this patent things on commercial. Companies are getting data for free and they make lots of money out of it.
Money for nothing and the data for free. Okay, right. So where are we going to go with this conversation? It's kind of up to you, Talkaoke. It's your forum. You can take it in any direction you want to take it. Leanne, have you got a view? Margot?
No, I've heard a lot of like negativity about the NHS today. I don't know where I'm picking it up from. But what is people's thought of it? Like, is NHS like beyond saving? Is it just so badly managed it will never make its money? It will never be up to what we would like it to be? I mean, like, is it completely doomed? Like, forget it. It's all about private healthcare, private science, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, like, is there much point to the NHS? Is it good to keep it alive? Or?
Is that prognosis terminal when it comes to the NHS?
No. I believe in the NHS, I work in the NHS. Not at all. NHS is one of the most cost efficient, or the most cost efficient health system in the Western world. The amount of money you put in, the value for money you get is huge. If you look at any cost analysis compared to Western economies, it probably comes at the top. If you compare outcomes, it's different. And as a proportion of money you put in, what workforce you use, it's a very efficient health system. There's been an issue of chronic underfunding. It's bursting at the seams from a capacity and resource perspective. So you have all these issues which are coming up to read up in the press and things. But actually for what it does for a population, for being free at the point of access, free at the point of care, it does an amazing job. I work in cancer. We work very efficiently in the NHS. As efficiently as anywhere else in the private sector in the world. So I don't think it's all doomed and done bust. I think the NHS has a future. I think like lots of other institutions and public services, it needs more investment and funding. And it does need some change.
Okay, so I mean, if that investment and funding did come, where would you want that investment and funding to go?
It needs to go across the board. It needs to go into resource, it needs to go into capacity, it needs to go into workforce, it needs to go into salaries, it needs funding right across the board. It's very difficult to say it's not needed in X or Y or Z place. But from my perspective, we need it across the board.
Okay, so a bit share it around when it comes to the NHS. Come and join in. This is Talkaoke Freeform Talk Show. Currently, we're talking about the NHS. Is it a terminal prognosis?
So if you got a €1 billion for running on 5 years in the field, how do you spend then? €1 billion, and this is do whatever you like, no regulations. So where do you think you would spend most of them?
Okay.
In what context are we talking? Are we talking about service delivery? Are we talking about healthcare? Are we talking about research? Or
no, we are speaking about genomic and vaccine, for example, or any diseases. Genomic and diseases. It's my test.
Hang on a sec, Timothy. Let me get a final thought from you before you hang on a sec. Let me just get, because you've not said anything yet, so we want to get a final and initial thought from you.
Australia as well, healthcare is struggling.
Grab the mic, otherwise it's going to get sold.
Yeah, healthcare is struggling across the board in a lot of countries, and needs more funding in general. Which is, I think, the main one.
I mean, when it comes to genomics, is that the kind of, I mean, Francesco was suggesting that's the kind of answer to...
It makes economic sense. So,
yeah.
I think there are more systematic. I'm on this.
Yeah. So, in a way, genomics isn't really ready to be the panacea for... but not in 2023.
No, it definitely does.
Yeah.
Definitely
does.
Okay, yeah, I just feel like there's a lot of issues.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks for giving us the Australian view. I didn't expect that. A round of applause. We were going to go back to, there was a question, I kind of posed the same question, to be honest, Ali. I said if you had a blank check, you said, what did you say? €1 billion. €1 billion. In a way, I felt like you didn't really, you kind of said you spend it on everything, didn't you? But if you defined it a bit more by saying it was on research, genomic research.
No, I was talking, I thought the question was which aspect of the NHS needed the funding. My view was whether you're looking at resource, you're looking at capacity building, you're looking at downstream where patients go after they get discharged, you're looking at primary care, or you're looking at salaries and workforce. All of them are bursting at their seams and they all need investment and funding. They're all suffering. But the question you asked was very different. To my perception of the question you asked was very different.
Answer this question.
So we got my question.
Okay, well, let me just answer. Francesco wants to answer this. We'll come back to you.
Answer my question.
So Ali, I think buy Thermo Fisher stuff for 1 billion. Actually, I just made a joke. Buy Thermo Fisher stuff for 1 billion. No, I'm kidding. That's a joke, bad joke.
So you want the 1 billion?
I'm kidding. Don't do it. Just
we'll share it out amongst us all.
My serious answer is the following. I think 1 billion is of peanuts. And you're not going to be moving the needle 1 inch with 1 billion euros or pounds. It's very little. If you count that, I agree very much with Roger. The NHS is one of the best healthcare systems in Europe. We complain all the time. The media complain all the time. But as a matter of fact, it's a blessing.
But just let me tell you why it's 1 billion.
Yeah.
Why it's not open check? Because 1 billion is that the number that you imagine, if European countries work together and put money on genomics, they will put together around 1 billion. I don't think they'll invest more. So I just want to put it realistic.
Okay, so it's a realistic amount. Okay, well, let's go back and get Ranjit to answer the question. We've got a new face over here. Just tell us your name.
Hello, I'm Jeevan.
Okay, we've got Leanne, we've got Ali, we have got this person.
Ibraj.
What's it?
Ibraj.
Ibraj, and we've got Margot, we've got Francesco, we've got Duarte, and we've got Ranjit, who's going to answer the question. No. I'll come back to you in a second, but I just want to find out what the 1 billion. I just want to find out what the 1 billion is going to be spent on. Please let me find out.
I split it across discovery and implementation science. And implementation, I put it out to grant calls, and I split it both across discovery, but larger portion going towards. I think even if we do the implementation science for the things that we know that work, we'll do a lot more benefit than we do unnecessary discovery. I have to be very specific on what the disease state is, what is it you're going to target, how is it that it's going to work. Some of it will be in risky projects, which will lead to high risk, high return, but a large majority will, I think, will be in the validation and yes, mixed bag, but larger proportion of it into implementation and a lot of it into prevention and screening and early diagnosis, but not doing things for the sake of doing them.
Give us an example of what implementation science.
So, an example, like Francesco was saying, going out and doing a large population study, but doing it for example, for the things that we know that work, doing it across different types of populations, also doing from the point of view of discovery and validation what you have done in the European population across the rest of the world, because the genomics differ, and therefore any thresholds you use, risks you use, implementation strategies you use, context you use will be different. So even if you replicate what you know works in certain populations, you're going to benefit a much larger part of the global population just by refining it and improving it. So I would go not so much into discovery, which has already got good funding coming in, but more around the implementation science and the long-term follow-up. Follow-up on previous studies? Not necessarily previous studies, we do studies design. I don't know. I don't think anybody is doing it in the sense, in the way it needs to be done. It's very different from going saying, give me your sample, get my Gmail, I'll tell you something happens. Or I'll find something and let you know in a few years. That's not the design of the study to answer the question properly from an implementation science perspective. You need to be prospective, you need to tell the person what is it you're going to do, what's the validation around it, is the person then going to take it up? It's only then you can have an understanding of the consent for doing something, the uptake, the interest, the intention, then follow up the screening and preventive behavior, and then do the economics around it. Otherwise, whatever you do in the other context that's being done so far in most of the studies, it cannot correlate with future perspective. It's not the same. They're not equated.
It's not really useful for the
NHS. Yeah, but for the health system, I'm talking beyond the NHS. So it needs to be, the study design needs to be right to answer the question. And there are some studies which are designed right and running right. A large number of them are designed for different reasons. They're more around discovery and validation than implementation science.
Okay, we're going to give you a round of applause. Okay, there's a couple of hands over here. I just want to say to people that have just joined, like Jivan and Ibraj, what was it? Ibraj, just chip in whenever you want, just raise your hand.
Can I highlight the importance of prevention? It takes a lot of effort to treat the endpoint disease and the pathology. I mean, an example is the non-specific cancer pathway. It's trying to pick up at least 25% of cancers are diagnosed. They've got vague symptoms. And there's a lot of resources that go into treating the disease after it's been diagnosed, when there's actually a lot of good you can do at prevention level. I'm not talking about screening, I'm talking about real prevention.
So can you just explain that a bit more?
Well, things like nutrition, mental health, occupational health. There's lots of things the NHS could do, but it can't do because the money is again there.
Okay, so would money be better spent on some of these prevention interventions?
It feels to me that this conversation about genomics and prevention and the sustainability of the NHS is very similar to the conversation we already had about climate change. So we are, like, this is the if you see the comparison, it's like we are in the 80s. So we know that climate change is coming. The science is solid. We know that the world is going to collapse and the temperature is going to increase and that's going to be the end of civilization as we know. And what we're trying to say is exactly the same for genomics, for the healthcare system. It's extremely efficient, it's very good. It's not good enough. It's not going to sustain itself in the future. So if I could answer the 1 billion question, I agree with Raj very much. Transactional science, it's the key, get what we know works into the healthcare system. But the reality is also that the whole budget needs to be redone. Because we cannot spend 3% on prevention.
Hang on, Leanne, let me get a final thought from you before you go.
I'll be right back.
Sorry to... let me get an intermediate final thought from you.
Intermediate final thought is that I will be back because I'm very interested in this conversation.
Okay, alright, okay. There's not much of an intermediate final thought, but we have got some space here for some... Come and join in, yes. You don't have to be an expert in anything, you just have to be a human being, potentially with a genome. You don't even have to have a genome to be part of this conversation. We're kind of talking about, Ali raised the point, if you had £1 billion to spend, something to do with genomics, how would you spend the money? We've got Ranjit here, who is doing huge studies, but what he was saying is let's focus on implementation science, not on discovery science. I would spend some of it on discovery science, but the implementations where the ka-ching is. And you were saying prevention.
I think there isn't any conversation on the role of consciousness and the genome. For example, what happens when someone gets diagnosed with something? And a lot of the time there's an influence of epigenetics. The proteome is probably changing the transcriptome, and is, I think, changing the genome. But that conversation isn't there. We need to start talking about defeating the idea of this central dogma. It's not a strict. There isn't this one-way flow of information from the DNA to the RNA to the protein anymore. It's actually the other way around as well. So when we talk to people, patients, we're already changing their genetic code. And that's going to add another level of work.
So do you mean that talking to people changes their genetic code?
Well, because we're changing the course of their lives. We're making them think differently. We're changing their behaviour, their nutrition. Then we have to go through the whole process again and reevaluate their genome.
Thank you, Roger, but we do need a final thought from you. Like anyone else, give us a final thought.
You guys are doing a great job. Keep the conversation going.
Okay, thank you, Ratsa. Okay, Ali?
I think he's waiting for longer, so probably...
Yeah, okay.
No, two points. I completely agree. But the question that goes with the question that always goes with the NHS, I always find it really funny because people say, oh, the NHS is in crisis, and but if you look at the money that goes into the NHS compared to the amount of service they do, has not kept up. So we're asking every year for the NHS to do more for more people with less money per rata. So that will never work. You're trying to find, you make savings, but something that's going to give. Now Brexit comes, half of the nurses from Portugal go away. What do? You don't have them trained here. You need another 10 years to train people. So that's why the NHS is in the crisis it is. Money and the fact that people that were from overseas went away. That's 2 points. And the other point is prevention, as Prakash was saying, what he was saying about prevention. When I came to the UK for the first time, I went to the NHS and I asked, I want to do some blood work, find out how my blood is. And the doctor looked at me, why? You're healthy, you don't need to. The question came because in Portugal you do it. Every 2 years you do a blood work to see how you are. And then they'll detect things earlier because we don't have as much money over there with our NHS there that you have here. So they use different approaches to try and find things a bit earlier. So the NHS has a lot of amazing technology, but they tend to be protracted in what they do. They do it afterwards.
They're more reactive.
So they'll spend more money. They'll spend more money on that. So I think those are the two things. Like we're not investing at the same amount of money with population getting older. It's like 1 + 1 = 3.
Okay. Before I bring you in, Ali, I just want to have a quick try and have a recap and get some names as well. So my name's Mikey. This is Talkaoke Pop-Up Talk Show. What's your name?
Hey, I'm Francois. I'm a postdoc at UCL. Work on zebrafish.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm Hannah. I'm a PhD student in PCL and I'm neuroscience.
Okay, that's definitely. For some reason the machine didn't give you an air horn. And we've got Ali, we have got
I'm heading to a talk now. So.
Okay, we'll get a final thought from you in a second, but we've got Margot, we've got Francesco, we've got Gerard, we've got Rod, we've got Eddie and Laura, and let me get your final thought. Let's get a final thought from we need final thoughts from you as well, or initial thoughts.
No, I think that's a good point. The colleague over there said preventative diagnostics. Yeah.
Is that your final thought? Have you got something bigger to give us about the direction of the NHS?
Well, I kind of agree with an earlier point that putting more money into genomics right now will actually be top-heavy investment, but we haven't really got we don't know what we're delivering yet.
Right.
It's going to be a few years.
I mean, okay, so we just need to find out more about it. I mean, is there an urgent question though? Because I think Francesco's saying that it's going to get urgent because of the healthcare burden of the future with an aging population.
Well, I mean, if you think of the cost of gene therapy, it's going to be prohibitive to diagnose more diseases.
So it's actually going to get more expensive to start rolling out this.
Astronomical. Okay. It's going to bankrupt the NHS. I'm for it, but it's going to bankrupt if we have to pay for gene therapy.
Okay, so keep stum about genomics for now. When it comes to the NHS, we'll have that. Is that enjoy the talk? Where are we going to go with the conversation? Come and join in. Maybe you are the answer to where we're going to take this discussion. Excellent. We need the PhD students. We had some. They came and introduced themselves. I thought it was going somewhere. We were going to find out something about zebrafish, and then they just swam away. Tell us your name.
I'm Beatrice. I just stopped because I heard you talking about Portugal.
Yeah.
I'm from Portugal.
Okay. So we've got more of a Portuguese perspective. Yeah. We've got a little bit of a Portuguese perspective, but what we heard from Gerard is that there's not as much money in the Portuguese NHS. Therefore, they do more preventative work, and that's basically the thing. I mean, Laura, you've got something to say?
Yes, I guess so. I'm not a scientist or I don't know much, but from my experience, what I wanted to share, what you were saying about how the NHS is different, what you know from, it was in Spain, sorry? Portugal, yes. So I'm from Poland and it's very similar. And here, when you are asking to do like a blood test, to, you know, just in general, it's so much of a hassle. But I'm also a regular blood donor, and it's quite surprising to me that they keep on wanting more blood. They text me, they email me like, oh, you're ready to give blood, just please come over. But then when I actually ask, oh, can you do my blood test because of this and this and that, it's so much of an issue.
So there's more taking, less giving.
Exactly. What is that about?
Yeah, okay. I mean, earlier on we were talking about being a genetic donor as well as would you be a genetic donor as much as a blood donor? A data donor?
I guess I am already a data donor to some extent. Yeah. You know, because there's a lot of like fine line. Fine text when you donate blood. They ask like, oh, are you okay with like just us doing some research in your blood and your blood cells, whatever. So I guess I am already part of it.
Okay, so it's already happening.
Just comment on what you said about we need more money and comment about Poland, because there's just two examples of this in my mind. One example about Poland. So a few months ago I was in a workshop or a conference, small conference in Poland, and they are working on 1,000 Polish genome. And I was asking why you are doing it, why you need 1,000 Polish genome, and we were near to Gorlitz. Gorlitz is the border between Germany and I told them, for Gorlitz, the people from Gorlitz, shall they use 1,000 Polish genome or 1,000 German genome or which one? I mean, is it really there is a benefit? So what I think is, there's a missing in the planning sometimes, and they have no answer why you're doing 1,000 because everyone is doing it.
Right.
So what I want to say is, I don't think it's only the money. For example, in pancreatic cancer, there was a biomarker called CA99. It was invented in 1960, blah, blah, blah. It was finding from very small cohort. And that was the standard biomarker for years running. And it was just antigen, they just check the antigen, and they say it is pancreatic cancer or not, from just simple one. But the problem is, they use it in practice, they use it in diagnosis, there is no good follow-up study on it for 40 years. No one used it in treatment. And now BioNTech, too late, after 40 years, they said, oh, we could make a vaccine out of it, and now they are in phase 2. So with one follow-up, now they found that they could make a kind of vaccine for pancreatic cancer, for prevention, as you were saying. And they expect in 2024, the vaccine could go in practice cases. So what I want to say is that, do we really need more money or more planning for our current money before we get more money?
I mean, my nephew says, work smarter, not work harder. But then again, he is very lazy, so I don't know if I really believe that applies. He's not a geneticist or in the field of genomics, he's at school. But should we be working smarter, not harder, when it comes to the existing data we already have?
The reason for the 1,000 genomes, I can almost bet, is that they calculated how many sequencers they could do. They calculated the money, they saw how much money they had on their grant, and they go, we'll do 1,000. That's how it was. It wasn't like, it would be better if they could find like 100 people with a very rare disease and you sequence those. But it's not like that. The way you do it is, this money has to be spent this year because that's the money we got, and that's how many samples we were going to run. They got 1,000. Other people did 100,000. We are doing 150,000. We'll do 1 million. Right? I don't know if we have a kind of a whole genome thing in there. I haven't followed there. But yeah, the most famous one is it in Iceland? Where they sequence everyone. They sequence the entire population. I think that is worth doing. Like if you have an entire population isolated geographically, and you sequence everything, that's brilliant.
So in Emirat they do it now. So in Emirat they have 1 million genome because they have only 1 million people.
Okay, so let's bring Beatrice in on this because I tried to get a Portuguese perspective on this just to get your interest. But what is your PhD? In bioinformatics. Does any of this conversation make sense to you?
Yeah, it makes sense. I like hearing
Well, yeah, we're very privileged to have this. We've got Polish, we've got Portuguese, we've got Italian. We didn't have the zebrafish. We never got the zebrafish perspective. It was so close to getting the zebrafish, and then something just scared them away. But we never got the Italian perspective of this. Is there an 1,000 genome project in?
Yeah, there is. Yes. But as everything else in Italy is completely balkanized, so everyone is doing their own thing, and they're trying to pull it together into one database, and that's what's happening also in Portugal. So, you're gonna hate me more than you do already, guys. But I think there are fads and there are fashion stuff in science as well, and whole genome sequencing is to me because in Europe we have so many samples, so many whole genome sequenced already, and there's a lot. What we're missing are the genomes from non-Western Caucasian populations. So we need, one researcher, a friend of mine mentioned that to me, his words, not mine, but I stand behind it. It's like an African genome is 5 times more valuable scientifically than any European one, because we have so many European ancestry ones, and we don't need them more. We need to go sequence, people in Africa, in Asia, and so that we can start implementing solutions using cheaper technologies like microarray or stuff like that. That is cheaper, and then you can bring it to the clinic and do stuff instead of sequencing Europeans ad libitum, and that just doesn't bring value to me anymore.
I mean, we had Josiel earlier on who was saying we need to sequence the genomes of the African population within Europe because they're easily accessible as a starting point.
makes sense. Yeah, the weird, and the 100,000 genome is doing it, and OFH is gonna do it again. So there is hope, but there's not gonna. To me, the next level is going directly into the countries because again, the population in Europe is representative, but it's not fully representative. I mean, it's not even close in numbers. So to me, that's it. And I'm gonna leave you guys. It's amazing, well done, awesome.
Yeah, by the way, we're here tomorrow as well, so stand by. Okay, let's get, we call that a final thought, but we want a final, you've returned, but you look like you're going again, so let's get some final thoughts. Maybe it's time to have a little break anyway. So let's get a final thought from you, Ali.
Planning. That's all.
Planning. But I think you need to say more than that. How do you plan? How do you actually, have that bigger picture and actually work smarter with the data already available?
I think that's something to do with this provider, the fund provider. When you fund project, be sure that the outcome is clear and they know what they are doing. And that is then, otherwise give it to another one, would do a better job.
So in a way, the funders could actually emphasize planning a bit more. Okay, thank you for that. We'll give you a round of applause. I'm going to go over to Leanne. Final thought?
I think wider data sharing partnerships and standardization across the board is important. I think that is what will be most impactful in the short term. Making huge investments now.
Oh yeah, I get a final thought from you as well. Is that the end of your final thought? But let's make them still a round of applause for that. Everyone today has been saying standardization. But I don't think we necessarily know how to do it. That's the feeling I get as a non-expert in it, but that seems to be that everyone says it, but nobody does it. Beatrice, final thought?
For me,
yeah, and also you mentioned about this, how to get easier access to data, because really this is our problem.
I used to work for one of these research organizations, so if I can all the tips I know about.
Okay, well, we're definitely doing that. We'll have a little break, but we'll all be back. We're gonna wait probably till the beers come out at 5, I think it is. There is a, yes.
I need to
we can, don't worry, hang here, and we can sort that out. We'll have our own little stash of drinks, I think. That sounds like a good idea, doesn't it? Well, we need to persuade the organisers, but there's still time. Okay, final thoughts for this session. What have you got final thoughts?
Perfect. I'm not sure you're going to find it. No, nothing that's too short.
Yeah. That's okay.
Nice meeting you. Send me a LinkedIn thing. Sure. Get in touch, yeah. No, it's fine.
Okay, we'll come back to you. Okay, well no, it can be like some questions for the next session, it can be anything, it can be just thoughts as a random collection of ideas that maybe don't fit together. Other people might be able to help you to piece together. It can be anything. Let me have a
there's one thing that I find very fascinating in terms of the sequencing that we were talking about is the unintended consequences of having your genome on databases, because I'm not very concerned about somebody copying my DNA or anything like that. I really am not. But there is one thing that is now already being done with even stuff that is like 23andMe, which is you can find criminals just by finding really like a how do you say a distant cousin and following the patterns of that. Like some criminals have been found now with that. So I find it really interesting that I might have like a cousin that might have killed somebody. I'll find them. They'll find it eventually with my DNA. But those are things that really cannot. The cat is out of the box. There's like I did the 23andMe, so any distant relative of myself, they're in trouble now. They're going to be captured.
All right. Okay. Anything over here? Final thoughts? Anyone else? Final thoughts?
I think what Rashid was saying earlier about like having been only like the point of doing the research is if you actually do it well, it comes. I still think we should have space in the budget for some blue sky thinking research as well. Okay. For some if you've got a population of people I'm really keen to be like just sequence my genome, I'm happy to do whatever with it. Then that's exciting. Like you should have a bit of room to do that kind of research.
We need some hype. We need a bit of hype, don't we? people have been complaining about the hype, but we need a bit of hype. We need a bit. But not saying that all blue sky thinking is hype, but we need a bit of imagination, a bit of. We need to dream, don't we? Okay, final thoughts.
I dropped one from my German
It's going to be my
number because
final
this is just
thought as
for.
well because I have to go. Well, I guess on like a realistic level, from what you guys were all saying, I would like to see more money put into things that we need more research about, like either focusing on the sequencing, more people in Africa because this is what's lacking, or like for me as a woman, researching more into female bodies, which I think is still years and years behind research on select bodies. So for me, this is very important, and
we may be coming to Germany
well,
to
I'm
get
happy to be a part of the research. Just like I don't see anything like this happening, or it's not loud enough on social media. Like even with like this genomics festival, it's not really on social media, and there is not many, people who might not be scientists or PhD students that might be interested in that, or maybe they need the spark to get interested in that, but it's not communicated to them. I guess the science platform is TikTok now. And that's it.
I mean, maybe more effort needs to be done in terms of that, in terms of it's how we started this conversation actually saying, are these kind of slightly dubious sequencing companies actually popularising genomics in a way where there isn't that, because we're not communicating the potential to the wider world. Okay, and final thoughts, Beatrice, final thoughts?
Real job.
Yeah, okay. Second final thought?
I was surprised actually if that you have that notion that that you feel that there's less money in females research. If you think about it, like in terms of cancer, the most researched cancer is women's cancer, BRCA. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think there's a big inequality in terms of at least genetic research into men's or women's. I think the most researched cancer is the women, and the one that kills more men is the one that has less discoveries around it, which is pancreatic cancer and things like that. So I'm not sure if that's true. There are other things there's inequalities, but I don't think in terms of genomic research there's that much.
So that's one plus for genomics there. Any final thought? Rob, anything you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I feel really strongly that there needs to be work done as well on the link between the genetic data that we have and how we use that for treatments, because I think there could be a lot of harm that can be done, especially with these sort of disorders that are on the fringe of whether these be treated, stuff like autism, where we could find genetic links and that could lead to people wanting to treat things that don't necessarily need a treatment, or that could be used to sort of stigmatise and marginalise.
She's from Lebanon.
And I think that needs to be talked about as well in any of these large scale genomic studies.
Need to decide what is a disorder, what's an abnormality, and what is diversity.
I just want to make a point quickly about the importance of regulation. Speak to both of their points, like treatability and also prosecution, like you mentioned. I don't know if everyone here is familiar, but right before, or right after, I think Christmas break, there was a mass murder at a university in the States, and they caught the perpetrator by searching publicly available genomic data. And they got no hits, but they did get hits on, I guess, his distant relatives in other states. And then they just called them up and said, hey, do you have like a weird cousin that lives in Idaho or whatever? And the woman was like, yeah, I do have a weird cousin who works at this university. And that's how they caught him. So, yeah, definitely a lot of conversations to be had about regulation, both around prosecution and treatability, like you said.
Okay, food for thought for the next session. We're just about to wrap up, but you've got a chance to have a final thought and an initial thought. What would you like us to talk about in the next session? Maybe we can ask that.
I hope the next session is for that.
Yeah, with the scene.
You've got people surprised, that have nothing.
What have you been looking at today? What have you been interested in today?
Drug development and genomics. So I'm a pharmacist and I teach genomics, so this is what I'm trying to see more part of the day.
Okay, it's interesting to get the pharmacy angle.
Just last year I was at.
It's something we've sort of asked about but not really had the answer to earlier on today, so maybe come for the next session. In the meantime, I just want to say thanks to everyone that's taken part. We will be back for the final session. Thanks everyone so far for taking part. And we're here tomorrow as well. If you're off, we're back tomorrow, so come back for more chat. Who knows where we're going to take this conversation. That's it.